if you've been watching these videos, which you have been for homework, or you've been getting the quiz questions wrong, you can see what this one says. Last one. Hallelujah, I know. Well, last one of new stuff. I do have some review videos that go with the state test, and we'll look at those later on. It's not a big deal. So this is now President Obama's terms, his re-election, running up to where we're at here. About 2014 is where I'm going to stop. Okay? Now, one of his yes I can moments, or yes we can, rather, is to provide affordable health care for all. It is called the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare. Now, he actually was talking about this for many, many years, and when it was actually passed, it was passed by an executive order, which actually means, if you remember, the president basically makes a law because he feels like Congress is going to debate it, and it has to happen now. There's been a lot of controversy over the Affordable Health Care Act, but again, we can't tell if it's working until 5-10 years down the road. All right. Also here in the kind of late 2009, 2010-ish, there was something that was inspired by Facebook, and it's called the Arab Spring. Arab Spring was a pro-democratic revolution in many Arab countries. It actually began in Tunisia with a fruit farmer practicing self-immolation or setting himself on fire in protest. It then spread to Egypt and Libya, as well as Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Bahrain. Many of these countries are going to feel this. These are young people who are in high school with Facebook. They were actually organizing on Facebook because they couldn't do it publicly under the fear of government backlash, and they took to the street and did these things here. Now, one of the biggest countries we need to talk about here is Libya. Libya, the United States will jump in a NATO mission with the goal of removing Muammar Gaddafi, because when they started to protest in Libya, he began to order his military forces to open fire. So NATO goes in. This is a fairly short mission. In the end, they do find Muammar Gaddafi. He has already been killed by some of the people, and they're going to have democratic things there. Now, the U.S. had an embassy in a place of interest in Libya called Benghazi, and this is a highly important scandal. You're going to hear about it in 2016. We're kind of getting answers. Maybe there's some more answers we need. Maybe we've heard everything we need to know. I don't know. But in Benghazi, Ambassador Chris Stevens and a couple of people there will be killed on the anniversary of 9/11. They did not want to use the term terrorist attack at the time, but it is a terrorist attack. Now, these 4 individuals you see right here will be killed, and some other things that are just kind of too ghastly to mention here. Now, the big question, and why is this a scandal, is there's a belief amongst Republicans that the Democrats, namely Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and President Obama, knew it was not safe in Libya and should have had time to get these men out and save their lives. Recently, the House Republicans have released this report. In the report, they found that the President and the Secretary of State did everything they were supposed to do. However, they should have recognized that there was an inherent risk there and should have had more protection. So is this going to affect Hillary Clinton's presidency in any way? I don't know. Is she going to be asked questions about it? Absolutely. This and the darn email scandal of deleting her emails are 2 of the biggest things you're going to hear about when she's up for debate and they have some downtime and they're not talking about issues. They're going to ask her these questions. So, one of the other places where there's some backlash against these protesters is in Syria. Syria is in the midst of a civil war today. Okay, al-Bashar refuses to give up the throne, and so the government forces begin to fight what is called the Free Syrian Army. Now, where this gets kind of interesting is here. The Free Syrian Army will actually be supported by, amongst other countries, the United States. Whereas al-Bashar will be supported by, you can see them there, Iran, Iraq, and Russia. So this turns into another proxy war. These two sides are being fed money to fight this war. Okay? Now, why is this such a big deal today? A lot of people see this as kind of a modern-day Vietnam in a new Cold War version 2.0. And we have these things. Now, in the free space of Syria, where the government has been removed, etc., a new foe has actually emerged, as well as in Iraq. And that new foe is called the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or simply ISIS. Now, ISIS is actually, if you can imagine this, even more violent and more bent on a caliphate than Al-Qaeda. So much so that Al-Qaeda is now fighting them because they say they're crazy. ISIS believes in Sharia law and believes in returning all these places that you see here to an Islamic understanding, if you will. Okay? In recent months, we've seen attacks, both in the United States and other countries, of ISIS supporters, most notably in Orlando this summer, as well as what happened in Bangladesh. But these are not ISIS itself, but people who support ISIS and say, I think they're in the right idea, and they go and perform these mass acts of violence. And so that is definitely something that has to be cared for and looked at. This is now who we are hunting. This is our new modern day, because famously Barack Obama will order a mission on some good intelligence, and Osama bin Laden will actually be killed. So now ISIS has taken that role, and what's find them understand Al-Qaeda is still planning activities and attacks, but we're kind of like, okay, we don't like these people more than we don't like you. Now, there is another scandal we need to talk about of the Obama administration, and it's called the Fast and Furious scandal, like the movie. We were trying to trace, were there weapons deals happening from the United States to feed the drug cartels of northern Mexico and also central Mexico. In the midst of all this, we set up a sting. All right, so we're going to have these guns, we're going to sell them and see what happens. The guns go missing, and they pop up in Mexico. And some of the guns are actually used to kill some American ATF agents. This does not look good, because it's like, how can you lose this stuff? I understand losing a phone, but how can you lose guns? And famously for this, as I mentioned before, Eric Holder, who's the first African-American Attorney General, will be held in contempt during the proceedings of these hearings. It's kind of on a lull right now, but we'll ultimately see what happened of this. We have the election of 2012, in which Barack Obama will run against Mitt Romney. This was a close one again, but Barack Obama wins re-election. Now, this one is of note because, much like in 1960 and in 1928, religion is an issue here. At this point, the question is Mitt Romney and his participation in the Mormon religion. And that becomes a major focal point, much like Catholicism was in 1928 and in 1960. And again, it takes the side of maybe the negative. Was that the reason he lost? There were other reasons as well, but ultimately that's a major thing to look into. In this second half, our second presidency, if you will, of Barack Obama, the big thing was passing the Affordable Health Care Act. The other thing that's really become a big button issue is LGBT rights, which actually stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. We have many states passing the right to same-sex marriage, um, and other things, as well as the Orlando shooting is a big issue in this. Uh, Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, however you look at that, changing and becoming a transsexual, and all these different things that prior to this were not heard of, but it's definitely more than anything else polarizing the United States. You're either on one side or the other, and it's reaching that abortion point. You can't mix both. It's the hawks and the doves in the 1960s all over again. Now, in recent months, and we're now approaching the end of President Obama's tenure as president, I've called it the mending divides. He has actually gone and done some things that some people see as controversial, other people applaud. First off, he reopened Cuba for diplomatic relations. He went there, he visited with Raul Castro. There was a baseball game played there. The United States men's soccer team is going to play an exhibition match against Cuba, a lot of things. Now, there was a controversy in this case because you can't see the pictures here, but he actually poses in front of a picture of Che Guevara, who was a known revolutionary as well as a murderer. As well as he has gone to Japan, as I aforementioned, and publicly apologized for the bombing of using the atomic bombs. Some people see this and say, yes, this is great. He's trying to get America into a new civilization. Other people seeing it as, well, what gives them that right to do that? They're going to hate America even more. Now, probably one of the more controversial things of this was not necessarily him, but John Kerry brokering what was called the Iranian nuclear deal, in which Iran was basically given the okay to develop a nuclear weapon. It's said that this nuclear weapon is only for defense. We don't fully know. Hopefully they never use it. But again, what do you think? What do you think he's actually doing? And we'll talk about this in class, all right? This is the end of the videos, all right? Hopefully you enjoyed these videos as a new way of doing homework, and we'll keep going with the state test review, but that is it.